I was 16, almost 17. So like that couple of years was very tumultuous looking back. And then I met this guy that was like 22 years older than me, but was very interested in me and like proclaimed to be a Christian and, told me that he felt like God had sent me to be his wife. And I was always like on the lookout for signs that God was talking to me. So I took that as like, oh, if this guy thinks I'm supposed to be his wife and he's a man, like he must have more of an in with God than I do, you know?
So often, people find themselves trapped in a life that they did not imagine for themselves before. And on this podcast, I have many stories that I'm sharing of people who have broken free, gotten out, learned to love themselves, learned to listen to their inner voice that tells them they deserve better. And this is a very, very powerful story of grooming, of loss of innocence, of disappointment, of toxic theology leading to these things. And I hope that you will listen to it, grow in compassion, and share this video with someone that might need to hear it. Thank you so much, Mo, for being here and for being willing to dive into your story and difficult parts and just being willing to put that out there to help other people. So, welcome to the show and the series
Yeah.
Reclaiming Trauma. So, the first thing I want to ask is these words put together, reclaiming trauma. What does that say to you?
Um, I would take it to mean that, first you have to embrace your trauma before you reclaim it. Like you need to fully realize and be willing to like mentally hash out what happened to you, what you went through, and then just finding a way to make it meaningful to you, like taking whatever meaning you want to take out of it and moving forward. And maybe that's that the only meaning for some people, I'm sure, is that, bad things happen to good people and it sucks, like it doesn't have to be a sign from the universe or something like that, yeah, it doesn't have to be that. Just what is it going to mean to you? Like you need to process it so that
Mm,
you can move forward.
absolutely. And you've done a lot of processing over the years, huh?
I have, yes, I have. And
So,
it's a continual thing. Like I'm not gonna lie, there are still some days where, the things that I went through at the end of my teenage years slash early adulthood, like I don't know, it trips you up. Like it gets to you thinking about, oh my God, like I still can't believe that that was a thing that I experienced, and it sucks, but it is what it is.
so it starts early, doesn't it? Like what you see at home and the church experience. How did those things, like the behaviors that you saw at home and the church that forms and shapes opinions on what's normal about how women should be treated, how did those things affect you?
I think like I definitely internalized everything that I was taught as a young child, like Sunday school. I'm always been a very literal person, and so I took it very literally, and I also like am the oldest child and like also the oldest grandchild slash cousin. So there's just this whole added level of like expectations that's put on you in that role. And then to combine that with like learning the do's and don'ts of what, being a Christian woman or a Christian female is supposed to act like. I don't know, it was very restrictive um in in what they you are supposed to think or feel.
So can you think of what were some of the more like meat heavier things that you internalized from those teachings?
From a very early age, they teach like there's God and then there's like a husband and then there's a wife and children. And it's supposed to be this like very set hierarchy. If you want to have a happy family, if you want to be a happy individual, you need to like find your place within this and be willing to follow God's plan about, you know, how that should be. And if you
So
don't follow that, you're not going to have a happy life, essentially.
Like you're lesser than, and if you don't have that umbrella of protection.
Right. And I think that that is disturbing to think about now. Like and I don't know, the gender disparity and gender like harsh gender norms of what they expect out of that. It's debilitating to women is what, in my opinion, now that I'm beyond it.
Like
So
how you're expected to perform femininity and submission and gentleness.
yeah. Yes. And to not like also I remember because I took everything really seriously and because I was a good like teacher for my siblings or like teacher of my peers and things, I was like, oh, well, maybe someday I could be like a pastor, right? I could see myself doing that. And then the denomination that I grew up in, exactly, it was like, well, you could lead like a women's Bible study, but women are not supposed to be teaching or preaching to a mixed audience. So that will never be an avenue for you. And I was like, I think that was one of the first times I was like, but that doesn't seem right. Like,
Yeah.
so
So would you say that you grew up super religious?
yes. And also like a super weird mix of religion because like my grandmother was a huge influence and she was very like fundamentalist, evangelical. And my mom would like prescribe to that half of the time during her upbringing. And then sometimes she was like the other way. I don't know, like just kind of not doing that, or we'd go try different churches. Um, but I mean, it was all pretty much under the umbrella of Christianity of some flavor or another.
Hmm. And um, you mentioned when we talked a long time ago that you actually converted from evangelical to Catholic.
I
How
did.
old were you when you did that, and like what what kind of came about because of that?
So I was 15, and I think it was because, in part, not even gonna lie, one of the boys I had a crush on in high school was Catholic. And I was like truly though, like had taken to heart, like, okay, well, if I like someone, I need to be like the same religion as them for that to work. So there was that aspect of it. But then also like he was a mutual friend in a big group of friends. And, a lot of that group were Catholic. So there was that part. It was like a social thing. And then the flip side was also when I read more into it and studied more into it, I thought that there was more of like a historical backing or basis or proof for the Catholic teachings because they could point to documents that had happened so much closer to the lifetime of Christ. And so it just, for a lot of reasons, I guess as a teenager, it resonated with me because it was like, well, this has to be more true if this is like more substantiated. And, all these people that are my friends and they're really nice, like they're Catholic, their parents are Catholic, and, they seem to be having a really good life. So maybe I can have one too. Kind of.
So 15, changing like denominations, like some evangelicals will say you changed religions and you were on the road to hell becoming Catholic, but I at this point in my life would say it's more of a changing denominations,
Yes.
flavors of Christianity. Um, happened at 15, and then at 16 you met the person that was going to really make a big difference in your life.
Yes, yes, I did. I was 16, almost 17. So like that couple of years was very tumultuous looking back. Like I had a couple of different little boyfriends like in high school. And I say little because it was like, we held hands and stuff. We didn't really like do anything because I was trying to be a good Christian girl. And then I met this guy that was like 22 years older than me, but was very interested in me and like proclaimed to be a Christian and, told me that he felt like God had sent me to be his wife. And I was always like on the lookout for signs that God was talking to me. So I took that as like, oh, if this guy thinks I'm supposed to be his wife and he's a man, like he must have more of an in with God than I do. So
So how long was he in your life? And I maybe it's a weird question, but does it seem like he kind of groomed you? to be
I
with
mean,
him?
yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. Because like we met when I was with my family on spring break. My mom was on her like fourth or fifth marriage at the time to this guy, and the guy's name is Steve, who groomed me. Steve was a friend of my mom's husband at the time. And so basically, he had a place in Florida. We were going to go down to Disney World for spring break. It was like a free sort of rest stop place to stay to enjoy some of our vacation outside of like being at Disney World. So that's how I met him. Like we were staying at his house. Um, like I said, I was 16, almost 17. I was in my junior year of high school. So we like we quickly had like a romantic connection, I guess. Like he took things way farther than anyone should have. My mom okayed it because whatever, for whatever reasons. That's a whole other can of worms. But I was very smitten and very like felt like, oh my God, I don't even remember it in terms of bases, but like we did everything but penetration, essentially, having just met each other on like this vacation, right? And like after that, I had like this weird mix of like infatuation, but also guilt because I had taken things farther with him than I ever had with anyone. So like, well, now I better see this through. Like now I better make good on like, you know, basically committing myself to this person, or else I will have done things with someone and then like to not be their wife, the guilt from that. You know what I mean? Like
Oh
it was a
yeah, I
whole
mean, I assume that you probably were deeply entrenched in purity culture and
yes,
all
yeah,
the beauty that entails.
right, exactly. So what for other teenagers maybe who weren't so religious would have been like something that shouldn't have happened anyway, right? But maybe would have been like a one-off thing where they could maybe look back and be like, oh, that was probably a bad decision and move on with their lives. It was like now I felt trapped almost kind of in a way. So for the next year, I went back to Ohio. I was living with my grandmother because she had gotten actually like temporary guardianship of me. Like she didn't have custody of me, which is probably part of the reason that my mom was like, yeah, do whatever you want, whatever. So for that next year, he kind of guilt tripped me into doing all sorts of things, right? Like into talking to him every day because he was lonely and he loved me and he wanted to hear my voice. But that meant like at the time buying a track phone, buying minutes, right? So that I could hide this and like staying up till like 1, 2 a.m. most nights, like not getting enough sleep to like be a good, like well thinking teenager, like doing well in school. Like he didn't care about any of that. He just wanted to like talk to me every single day. And if I didn't call him by a certain time, he'd be like, oh, are you just hanging out with your other boyfriends you have up there, whatever. Like so yeah, no, the grooming was real. It really happened. And I mean, like he also persuaded me into like sending him money from my little waitressing job because he'd lost his job and was like going through some things and like I don't know, just I mean, we talked every day. And when we weren't talking, we were writing emails or on the IM while I was doing homework and like it just yeah, it very quickly snowballed into this everyday thing. And there were times, I'm not gonna lie, where I second guessed what was happening in myself and like I don't even want to be doing this. Like this is too much, you know? I just want to go like do stuff with my friends. I don't want to feel like I have to check in with somebody. But then it would kind of be like, yeah, but like you made a commitment to this person and you do have feelings for him. He has feelings for you. Like this relationship that you're having right now is bigger than like your high school experiences basically was kind of how it was like portrayed and how I took it. And so as soon as I turned 18 and graduated high school, I literally moved down to live with him like 3 days after high school graduation, much to the chagrin of pretty much everyone in my family and friend circle, but I was like, but we've talked for a year and this is what it was all leading up to. And I don't want to be without him anymore. I don't want to be long distance anymore. Um, so yeah.
It sounds a lot like a kind of a father dynamic of checking in with me and
Yeah. Yeah, it's all
I mean,
gross.
he was old enough
It's
to
all
be
so
your dad,
gross.
so
Oh yeah, he was older than my dad. Like my dad and my mom had me, like when my dad was 17. So there's a 22-year age gap. Like, yeah, which let people unpack Freudian whatever out of that they will, I'm sure, right? But yeah.
but nobody is going to be judging. Nobody watching this video is going to be judging about the decisions of a teenager that were really, and I like, my channel is a very safe space of really loving, generous hearted people that want to grow and grow in compassion and understanding of people. So yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
And if anybody else managed to come over there, delete and block, because ain't nobody got time for
Oh,
that.
like I don't really care. I'm just saying, like, I've heard that before. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
tell the story and people are like, oh, so father issues, right? Like it's
Isn't it
very
just
common.
so nuts that, oh, daddy issues is a dig at women when it's the absent or terrible fathers that are the cause of it? Like,
Right.
everything's on
And
the women. You should feel
yeah,
guilty for what he did to you.
right. So there you go. I guess I haven't fully processed everything out of my psyche from my upbringing. Yes.
Makes me so angry just thinking of people stuck. So how long did you deal with this controlling person? And what was a thing that was like, okay, I'm done, I'm out?
So altogether, from like when I met him until the very last time that we like spoke, it was, hang on, make sure I'm not doing the math wrong. It was like between 6 and 7 years. I think it was 7 years. But it was on and off, right? So the first 3 years were very steady. That was from when I met him, counting that whole time while we were apart, but talking every day. And then moving down, I lived with him for 2 years, the first 2 years of my undergrad. I lived with him instead of living on campus, which is, to be honest, like one of the biggest regrets of my life because I missed that. Like I didn't go do the whole college experience and have dorm mates and make those like college friends for life that people make. I was just stuck with him. And so that was pretty miserable. Like I am still grateful though that I was at least going to college and learning things enough to like kind of see how other people were living and be like, this something's not right here. Like things are not adding up. Normal people don't do these things. Like normal people don't live like this. They don't have relationships that look like this. They don't center their lives around their partner like this. So that was like 3 steady years. And then I moved. I moved out. I called, we were gonna get married. I called off our wedding and moved back to Ohio and like was in Ohio, but like we still communicated frequently. It's so hard once you've been that close with someone to not at least have like the companionship of, I guess, someone who knows you that well. I don't know how to explain it. It's just sort of like, I don't know, because I say all these things and what he did wasn't right, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't like some attraction there, right? Like there were things that we shared in common, some mutual interests, a mutual sense of humor or interest in some other things or whatever. Like, and it was, that was what made it even more confusing, like, so we would break up and then we would talk again for a while. And then I'd be like, I can't do this anymore. And then the final time that we got back together, um, was uh, again, I don't even know if we have time for that as a whole other can of worms, but I ended up moving back down to Florida from Ohio where I'd been to live with him again. And it was just bad. Like it wasn't the same um as it had been the first time I moved down. It kind of went sideways from the get-go, and then it was just sort of trying to figure out, okay, like I've gotten myself back into this pickle again. How can I get out again? And just sort of trying to find a job and a place to live that wasn't with him. And he was trying to do various things with work too. And so the final way that I really got away was that he became an over the road truck driver. which meant he was gone for extended periods of time. And one of the times when he was gone, I was just like, you know what, like I'm done. And I packed all my stuff up and moved out to go live with a friend and, figure things out from there. So
And was it sometime after that point that you ended up having that one night stand and you got pregnant from it?
oh, okay. So I couldn't remember if we talked about that before or like if you had time for that. So sorry. Yeah. So that was why I moved from Ohio back down to Florida with him, was because we had broken up. Yeah, I had been talking with someone else. I visited him for like this other guy for a weekend and got pregnant. And the guy that got me pregnant, in hindsight, right, probably made the appropriate response, which was, we are not serious. Like, you should get an abortion, right? Like, this was not a serious thing, blah, blah, blah. And me, with my still sort of like deconstructing self and like having guilt about abortion and pro life and all that kind of stuff, couldn't see that as an option. So I didn't get an abortion, but I also was struggling really hard with like, how is the rest of my life going to look if I keep this baby? Because at this point, I had just turned 21. So, and I only had the 2 years of undergrad. I had dropped out when I moved back to Ohio. Um, and I was freaking out. I was pregnant and emotional and felt abandoned and was upset. Didn't have a good response about like, hey, we're here to help you, from about half of my family. And I was just freaking out about like, what am I going to do? Like, I didn't grow up with a strong, like, single father figure consistent in my life. And I knew that if I was going to bring a baby into the world, I didn't want to do the same thing with them. And the father of that baby wanted nothing to do with me or the pregnancy or anything. He was like, I would pay for you to get an abortion. If you don't want to do that, it's on you. Like, good luck. Um, yeah. So I was really freaking out. And so I pick up the phone, I call Steve, and basically he kind of comes in to like save the day or be there for me. But of course, it was in like the worst, most toxic way possible, which I didn't see at the time. But like, yeah. So we reconnected then. And basically, I was on the fence anyway, but kind of he was like, well, you could do an adoption and then maybe, we could go back to square one and try to rebuild our relationship. And I kind of saw that as the only feasible thing to do because I couldn't figure out how I was going to pay for a baby by myself. Um, so that's what I did. And I moved down to Florida before I had the baby, in part because he kind of had talked me into it, and in part because I knew if I stayed in Ohio with like my mom, my grandmother, there was no way I'd be able to give the baby up for adoption. And at the time, that seemed like the most clear cut thing to do because I just couldn't, like, I crunched numbers after numbers and I was like, there's no way I find a job that makes enough money to live comfortably and put this kid in daycare. And now, like, I wish I had known about like some of the things that, can help people that are under a certain income, single mothers, but I don't know. I either just didn't look into it enough or wasn't aware, whatever. But
Was it a
um,
closed or open adoption? Is there any chance that they can find you later?
no, yeah, it's very open. Yeah, so that he knows who I am, and it was boy, so he knows who I am, and we talk once a year on his birthday, and he has a great family. So, like, I'm so happy for him, right, and like for the situation that he's in. Like, I have no regrets about doing that for him. I have major regrets about how it affected me and like my life choices surrounding all of that, and et cetera, et cetera. But um, I, again, reclaiming trauma, right? Like, I try to tell myself every day how it worked out ultimately was the best thing for the child. So yeah.
Well, thank you for being willing to share that. That just must be such an incredibly difficult thing to revisit, that the whole topic.
It is, but I I'm grateful for the children that I have birthed since and have kept and have gotten the chance to mother. And you know, like, you just kind of have to be grateful for that.
Yeah. So, gonna kind of change the gears a little bit of
Sure.
evangelicalism he was really deeply entrenched in that, wasn't he? And the word that always comes up when it comes to toxic manipulative people is that it's narcissism. That evangelicalism creates narcissists. It's the culture system. I should try to put that into a question, but I don't really have the words right now, so you can just add your thoughts on top of that.
Um, yeah, I would agree with that. I think especially, how do I put this? Okay, I'm going to say this because if you look at most televangelists, especially leaders on TV, leaders, right? People with their hand out, they are like the penultimate narcissist, right? They have made themselves out to be this great messenger from an invisible, no one can else can hear them being, and they have like the end, right? Like so thereby they're like, I am special. Step one. Step two is I'm so special that I need you to support my lifestyle so that I can do this divine mission from God, right? Like I you can't get more self-centered than that. And then add into that like the whole, oh, what is it called? I can't think of the right verbiage, but the gospel of plenty, that I think that's what it is, right?
Or like
Where
prosperity gospel.
yes, prosperity gospel, where like you do the most good and you get so close to God, he can't help but bless you with better finances and more material things and everything that is like directly opposite of what Jesus actually said, right? But but there it is. And so Steve had totally bought into that, like lock, stock, and barrel. He literally had, like, he was a big believer in not only like the God, you know, like evangelical kind of Christianity, but also in The Secret. If you've heard of that book, have you? No.
I don't know.
It's this kind of cultish thing that is like, if I can just like believe and declare into the universe that something will come to me, it will come to me. Right. So there's that.
It's literally the exact same thing as like the manifesting.
Yeah.
What's that called? I don't remember.
Manifest destiny.
No, but and they're so quick to, that's new agey, that's Eastern mysticism, but that's
Right.
exactly what
But
it
it's
is.
the same. Yes. The secret is like, yes, exactly. And I'm not like, if you want to go through life and be super positive and believe that good things are coming to you, I'm not like downing people on that, but like he believed in it in a very literal and kind of strange way. Like he had a blank check that he had filled out to himself from the universe with like a dollar amount on our fridge all the time. Then he believed that that exact amount of money was going to come to him in some way. And then he also was like a follower of Tony Robbins, right? Who was also like a very self-helpy kind of thing. So everything that he did or everything that he had interest in was about how can I serve myself? How can I make this serve myself? How can I make you serve myself? How can I make this system or these people or anything? How does it serve Steve? Like that was his complete MO. Yeah.
Dealing with all of this must have just made you so angry. Like,
Yes.
how
And
did you
still
deal?
does.
How did you deal with that anger?
I mean, at the time when I was still with him, it came out in, you know, regular explosive fights. I'm not even gonna lie. Like it would be me starting to question things, him getting super defensive, or, you know, starting to attack me. Like that I was imagining something, or that, you know, just little cutting remarks about like my appearance or you know, my appearance, my general personality, my anything. Like he would find a way to make it just a personal attack instantly to deflect everything, and that would make me angry. Like we had screaming matches, right? Like where I felt like this is not who I am as a person. I'm not like an angry, yelling person on a daily basis, but somehow I like the little things that you are saying and doing constantly add up to like a death by 1,000 paper cuts, you know, and then you just explode. So that was how I dealt with it at the time, which wasn't healthy, right? I should have just exited the stage. Like that would have been the healthy response. Don't engage, just go. Find somewhere else, be like, this is not for me. I need to go. But I didn't. Since then, I would say dealing with the anger, because there is still anger, is mostly, like I said, just trying to I either write about it, and I have written a lot of things about this from just for myself. Um, Talking about it with friends and family, who I trust and who are willing to listen and be like, yeah, that was messed up. Like we were trying to tell you at the time, you didn't want to hear it. We're sorry. We're sorry that happened. But yeah, that was messed up. Like you didn't do anything wrong. It's messed up, right? So I have a great support system of that. I can say of my sister, my cousin, my mom, even though she's sometimes helpful and sometimes not, right? But so yeah, I mean that's really it. But there's still a lot of anger. Like I'd be lying if I said I didn't fantasize about a hurricane coming and smashing his house to bits. You know what I mean? And that's not good. I try and feel that and then be like, okay, but you don't really mean that, because yeah, you are a normal person who doesn't really want people to die. Just move on, right? Let it go, take deep breaths, take a walk, and try to look at all of the good things that exist about my life now. Yeah, that happened, but I've been able to make my life into this instead.
Yeah. So this is the part of the show where I invite you to get closer to the camera if that feels natural.
Okay.
Look deeply into it and just speak to that person who's stuck in a gaslighting, controlling, guilt tripping, spiritually abusive relationship, and just speak to them and speak some hope to them.
So, to anyone in a relationship like that, first of all, I'm gonna try to say this without crying. I want to say that you have to love yourself. You have to love yourself and care about yourself enough to know that everything that person is saying about you to others about you, or speaking over your life, basically, you got to let that go. And that is so much easier said than done. But the way that I found to get out of it is to talk to someone that you trust, that is not that person. Talk to someone that has known you for a long time, your whole life, that you can confide in. And if you don't have anyone like that, because maybe not everyone does, find someone. Find someone who is a therapist. Maybe it's calling your local domestic violence shelter and asking to speak with a professional who can guide you through some things. If you're on campus, you can talk to your victim advocacy office. I promise you, there are resources in your community that are zero cost to you and are there to help people like you. So either talk to a loved one or talk to a professional and just be honest. Say, look, I'm hearing this, and this from my partner. I don't think it's true. And they'll be able to confirm for you, no, it's not true. You don't owe that person anything, right? You don't owe them another day with them. If they are making you feel like crap, you always have the option to go. And it may not seem like that, because I know what it is to feel trapped and feel like, okay, but where would I do? But if you make the first step into finding what else is out there for you, I promise that there are options out there, and there are options that you probably haven't heard of or probably haven't thought of. So, but you have to sit in front of a mirror, give yourself a pep talk, love yourself enough, and then pick up the phone and call someone and say, I have a weird feeling about this. Because hearing from someone else, yes, that is your weird feeling is correct. That's not normal. That will give you the power to be able to make the next step and start looking at how to make changes for yourself.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I hope that whoever needs to hear this will hear it. That if somebody's watching this, you're and it's making you feel a little uncomfortable, you're here on purpose. The universe, whatever you want to call it, brought you here.
Right.
And yeah, you are loved and you deserve to love yourself. And yeah, so Is there anything else that you would like to say?
I guess I would also add on, like, please don't make lifelong commitments before you've even become an adult. don't don't commit yourself to someone. You can say, like, I feel like I want to be with you. We'll see where the next, few months, few years go. But know that the world is so much bigger than, your small hometown or any hometown, really. Like, it doesn't matter. But the world is bigger than your experience at 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. The life is long. It goes on. You have a lot left to experience. Please don't feel like you need to commit yourself to someone when you are still figuring out who you are as a person. And then if you have committed yourself to someone and you change as a person, that change is valid and you don't have to keep those commitments.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Especially the thing you said resonated about earlier about, well, I did all this physical stuff, so I had to plan on getting married to make it right. Like, no, your
Right.
worth is not in your virginity. That is a
Yeah,
social construct that doesn't even exist. And you're not
exactly.
owed anything. And getting married won't make it right. It will just potentially leave you in a horrible, abusive situation.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I'm all fired up now.
Same. Go smash the patriarchy.
Smash the patriarchy. Uh, yeah. All right. Well, the way that I end my conversations is I give hugs. So,
Oh, nice.
hugs. Thank you, Mo. Hugs to you watching this. Thank you for taking the time to hear the story. I hope it inspires some compassion in you for people that are in situations that you may have no clue about, that is outside of your comfort zone and outside of your experience, but you can love a little better now having heard this. Bye.
Well, thank you for doing this, Katie. Thank you for doing the work.
Thank you so much for being here. I hope that you will like this video, share it with someone, and if you haven't already, subscribe and hear more stories of inspiration and encouragement and growth. I hope you will join this community that wants to make the world a better place. Bye.